Chairman, thank you for being here. Professor Mascott, this case that we're talking about, Trump v. United States, it was before the United States Supreme Court because the Biden administration decided to criminally prosecute former President Trump. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
And in fact, President Biden's lawyer actually asked for expedited review and an expedited decision by the Supreme Court. Is that correct?
Yes, the prosecution would have found expedited review helpful.
When the court handed down its opinion, well, strike that. The title of our hearing is, quote, "When the president does it, that means it's not illegal." And Chairman Durbin explained what he meant by that, but I just want the record to be clear. Did the Supreme Court, in its opinion, ever say, quote, "When the president does it, that means it's not illegal"?
No, that doesn't appear in the opinion.
All right. At the oral argument of this case, President Biden's lawyer actually conceded, did he not, that core functions of a president should have absolute immunity?
Yeah, I do think there's agreement that core functions should have immunity.
In fact, President Biden's lawyer said, quote, "Core functions can't be regulated at all."
That's correct.
Close quote.
Yes.
Okay. What is forum shopping?
Forum shopping is the act of trying to find a court that you think is going to rule favorably to you.
Does it go on in the United States?
Many folks think that it does.
Yeah, it does. It's hard to stop. Let's just stipulate for a moment that America's withdrawal from Afghanistan was not a model of efficiency. People died, including Americans. Can you imagine a scenario with respect to President Biden, now former President Biden? Can you imagine a scenario in which a district attorney in a jurisdiction that repeatedly voted overwhelmingly against President Biden and whose voters did not like President Biden? Can you imagine a scenario in which an ambitious district attorney, after President Biden is out of office, could bring a charge against former President Biden for criminal negligence in the death of Americans? Can you imagine that?
Well, Senator, that would be very troubling, and so that's one of the things.
But can you imagine it happening?
I could imagine district or attorneys wanting to bring such an action. Sure.
I mean, now that we've decided that former presidents can be prosecuted, this current case before us is the first instance, but I fear it's not going to be the last. Now, let's suppose this ambitious district attorney in an anti-Biden jurisdiction or venue decided to prosecute former President Biden, which I think would be a mistake. But he meaning former President Biden, would have to defend himself, wouldn't he?
Yes.
And suppose he won, he'd still have to pay his lawyer, wouldn't he?
That's true.
Are lawyers cheap?
Only those of us who teach
No,
law.
strike that. I know they're cheap. Are they inexpensive?
No, they're not.
So President Biden could spend millions of dollars.
That's true.
Even if he won.
Yes, sir.
Now, let's suppose after that trial was finished, another ambitious district attorney in another venue or another jurisdiction decided to do the same thing. And then another. And then another. Can you understand what the court was talking about when it said We can't allow the court system to have a chilling effect on a president, any president, in making these decisions. Can you understand that?
Absolutely. The risk of facing that would certainly significantly impact how a president would make decisions in office, and that's the last thing we want.
Can I have 30 more seconds, Mr. Chairman? I don't want to mispronounce your name, sir. Don't count my fumbling around against me. Mr. Lacavara,
Never have.
you were vociferous in your criticism of this opinion that the words presidential immunity don't appear in the Constitution. Is that right?
That's part of it, yes, sir.
Do the words separation of powers appear in the Constitution?
No, I acknowledge that there is a structure called the separation of powers.
Is there any doubt in your mind that we have separation of powers in the United States Constitution?
No, and I think it's important to understand what the separation of powers does and does not imply. And
Right.
what it does not imply, in my judgment, is the kind of immunity that the Supreme Court established here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you, and thank you to our witnesses. Thank you, Chair Durbin, for holding this important.
Thanks for watching the Capitol Brief, where politics meets clarity. If you found this video insightful, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe for more sharp takes and key moments from Capitol Hill. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.